Alright, here's the second part of the video I wanted to do for Lesson 3. So what we've got going on here is it's having you think about what's the difference between writing a number in exponential form compared to writing it in standard form. And so like we just talked about with that chart, we were looking at if you are going to multiply 10 times itself, how many times does it take to get to 1,000? We know that from that video we saw 10 times 10 got us 100. Now if you have 100, 200, 300, 400, so on, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, that's another times 10. So we had 10 times 10 to 100, and then times 10 yet again to get to 1,000. So in that case, what are we doing? We're multiplying 10 times itself, and we're going to use an exponent up here to show how many times we multiply it times itself. And it's 3 times. Because 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times 10 more gets us 1,000. Because you've got your 100. And if you have 10 100ths, you have 1,000. Now if we think about, we've got 1,000. We've got 10 of them. You say 10,000 when you read it. So that's going to be 10,000. If 1,000 took 3 times, where you multiply 10 times itself, you're going to be multiplying this times itself. We have that by saying 3 of them, and then we have a fourth one. Here's our fourth one, right there. And we just figured out that 10,000 is 10,000. So here's 10,000. It's going to match 10 times itself, 4,000, gets you exactly the same thing. Now if we say 10,000 and we do it yet again, we know that if we had 4 of them before, and we're saying here's another one, we start with our 10. We're going to say we're going to multiply it times itself 5 times. You can also too look in here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. How many zeros? Happens to be 5, so there's a match. This one, if we look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. 10 is where you start. You multiply it by itself 6 times to get there. Here what we're looking at is we've got 10 million. 10 million. I can darken up my commas here a little bit. Take out that decimal. You've got 10 million here, and you are dividing it by 100. So if you're dividing it, it means it's going to reduce the place values that are in the number. If you're reducing it by 2 places, you can cross those out. Now we've got 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros is our result. So 10, if we have 5 zeros, it's going to be that. And so that is going to match this one where we've got 10 to the 5th. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros on that one too. So they kind of match up. Now we switch. We're going to be writing numbers in standard form, so kind of the spread out format of them. So when we look at this, we know 4 times 1 is 4. And how many zeros is it going to have? Well, 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times 10 gets us 1,000. 1,000 times 4 happens to be 4,000. Here's 3 right here for our exponent, and it ends up being 3 zeros. We know 1 times 40 is 40, and then we're going to say 3 place values because we're multiplying by 10 3 times over. 1, 2, 3. We know that 40 times 1,000, because 10 to the 3rd power is 1,000, 40 times 1,000 is 40,000. The next one we've got, this one actually has some decimals in it. Decimal places. It's got the 10ths place. It's got the 100ths place. Right now there's a 0 in the 1s place. If we're going to multiply this number times what we know this would be, which is 100, because 10 times 10 is 100, that means what's in the 1s place now is going to go in the 100ths place. So we have our 6. we have a 0 in the hundreds place. The 7 and the 2 come next. Does that look right? Ones place, tens place, hundreds place. That was the one we were thinking about because it's in the ones place. 1 times 100 is 100. 0 then goes in the hundreds place. And if we look over here, we have those exact same numbers again. 6,072. So it matches what we just finished with. How did we get to that? Well, we added 2 place values to this one. This time if we're taking that number and we're taking 2 place values, because it's 10 to the second power, we're going to be taking 2 place values. It's going to be the exact opposite. So it would result in where we started. So it's kind of going through that whole process. 6, 0. The 2 was in the ones place. We're dividing by 100. It goes from being in the ones place to the hundredths place then. So here's our decimal. Here's our 2 in the hundredths place. So our 7 stays where it is because they always stay in the same order. 6072, 6072. They just change value. So the 2, which is in the ones place, 1 divided by 100 is 100th. So it goes from the ones place to the hundredths place. Here we've got a pretty big number. We've got 5,300,000, and it says we're dividing, so it's going to get smaller, and it's going to get smaller by 4 place values because it's to the 4th power. That's our exponent, is the 4. So right now we're in exponential form. We want to go to standard form. So if we're dividing, we know we're getting a reduction in place values. So this is going to take away 1 place value, 2 place value, 3 place value, 4. So it's going to leave us 530. 530. And then when we take a look at this one's kind of going the opposite direction, isn't it? Instead of dividing, this time we're multiplying. So we are growing, not shrinking. We're expanding by 5 place values. So if we're expanding by 5 place values, we've come to know that, if it's kind of like this one right here, 3 zeros, we added 3 zeros. This time we can't really add 5 zeros. If we added 5 zeros, it's going to be 5, 3, 0, 0, 0. But what's going on here is the 5 is in the ones place. The 3 is in the tenths place. So if we say times 5, we know from looking up here that if we've got 10 to the 5th power, we're looking at 100,000. So this is going to end up pretty big, isn't it? So if we're moving this, we actually are going to be counting. There's already a place value fold. So if we go 5, 3 is one of our place values that we're growing. And then we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if you multiply 5 times, this became 100,000. The 5 is now in the 100,000s place. And we didn't add 5 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, not 5, because one of those place values was already full. And so if we looked at it that way, if we added only 3 zeros, it would have been the wrong answer. It would have been a place value short. So I hope this helps. Think about the difference between the exponential form and the standard form. So the goal for the week was for thinking with reason on the concept of place value, to think about it concretely and pictorially. So this is thinking pretty concretely in terms of actual values. So I hope that helped.